We've spoken quite a bit about your efforts at teaching compassion and the different groups you're involved with at institutes and university programs. Can you explain what happens or what the results or benefits are for people that are actually learning how to cultivate compassion? Do they notice changes? What actually happens to people if they develop these practices?
Yeah, wonderful question. It's very practical and very meaningful. People become happy.
That's great.
Yeah. We can look at this from several perspectives. That is, what are the results of compassion? I mean, it boils down to feeling happy, but there's more to it than that. We can look at it from the sort of anecdotal perspective of those that have cultivated to a very deep and broad, vast degree unbiased compassion and ask them what their experience is. And often they will talk about a sense of meaningfulness in their lives. There's virtually no more worry, anxiety, fear. Anger is nearly or almost completely non-existent in their lives. Jealousy and pride are, almost non-existent or much less. They operate much better in a family situation. They operate much better in their workplace, in their communities, etc. We can also look from a more scientific perspective. What are the results in a person who's cultivating compassion? And there we find a number of things, both on the physical and the mental, emotional level. On the physical level, one of the dramatic things we find is the immune system is much strengthened when someone is practicing compassion. And the opposite, when one is much more angry and negative and judgmental, the immune system is weakened. And we know the immune system is very important in healing, not just for the common cold and the flu, but also for such diverse diseases as cancer. The immune system is very, very important. And in fact, a few years ago, there was some research on women with breast cancer.
Okay.
And this research was replicated a number of times, and it's now very well accepted as correct. Women with breast cancer were divided into two groups. Both groups of women with breast cancer received whatever was required for their breast cancer. So usually that's some form of surgery, either a mastectomy or a more minimal lumpectomy. Then sometimes, depending if there are lymph nodes involved or not, radiation or chemotherapy will be recommended. So both groups of women got whatever was needed for their type of breast cancer.
Right.
Now, the difference in the two groups is that one group received TLC, tender loving care.
Right. How do you administer that?
A psychologist was, very good question, a psychologist was assigned to them and on a regular basis would meet with them, just give them tremendous love, support, and kindness on a regular basis. That was the only difference between the two groups. Now, the result of this research is that, one thing they did is they did questionnaires about life satisfaction. And as you would imagine, the women in the group that received the love had better scores on the life satisfaction measures. Okay, that you would expect.
Right.
Then they looked at morbidity and mortality. It means other diseases and death. And it turns out that the women of the breast cancer group that received the TLC lived longer than the group of women with breast cancer that got the regular standard treatment but did not get this additional love.
Right.
And that's very well accepted research, replicated many times, large groups of women, and very good studies published in very good journals.
Right.
So this is accepted in the medical community.
That's a very powerful message.
Very powerful. In addition to that, people that have the opposite, that practice the opposite of compassion, which is basically anger and jealousy and a lot of judgment, negative judgment of self and others, have more heart attacks. We call them
Yes.
type A personalities. We
Okay.
call that in medicine, type A personality. They have more heart attacks. They die earlier than those that are not angry much of the time.
Right.
They also suffer more accidents and are prone to early death from accidents. Also higher use of heavy alcohol use.
Right.
Yeah. So by practicing the opposite of this anger, jealousy, pride, and negative judgment, by practicing compassion, then we reduce all of those risk factors for early death through heart attack and through accident, through heavy alcohol use, and heart attacks, even those not leading to death, but leading to reduced lifestyle,
Right.
more disability.
Now, are there any studies that show the impact on people who might have chronic diseases, such as hypertension or cholesterol problems, or maybe diabetes? Are these types of instruction helpful for people that are managing sort of long-term disease control?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now, this doesn't mean that compassion cures diabetes, high blood pressure,
Right.
and these chronic diseases. It does not mean that. They don't. But the way people handle those diseases, and therefore how they handle their lives in their families, in their workplace, in their communities, in their neighborhoods, changes dramatically when they practice compassion. And so therefore their relationship with their chronic disease shifts.
Oh.
So let me give you an example, a very good example. It's not quite compassion, but it's meditation.
Okay.
There's a man whose name you may recognize, John Kabat-Zinn,
Yes.
who is a dear friend of mine, who practiced at the University of Massachusetts, ran a pain management clinic. And the people that came to his clinic are people that have chronic pain, maybe headache, abdominal pain, pelvic pain, back pain, some kind of pain. And they went to all kinds of doctors, Chinese medicine doctors, Tibetan medicine doctors, acupuncturists, you name it, and allopathic doctors.
Right.
Took all the medicines and all the therapy that was recommended, and eventually they found no relief. That's the kind of person that showed up at the door of this pain management
Sort of
clinic.
the worst case scenarios for pain.
The people that are really at their wits' ends.
Right.
Yeah. And what John Kabat-Zinn did, he taught them a kind of mindfulness-based meditation. And now
Right.
it's been called MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Right.
Okay? Drawn from Buddhist meditation, but put in a humanistic idiom, non-religious idiom. So
Yeah.
his vocabulary does not include Buddhist terminology.
Right.
Then what he did is he had people do this meditation every day for 45 minutes to stay in the program. And the
Okay.
meditation are basically the 4 mindfulnesses. Scanning the body, scanning the sensations, scanning the feelings or emotions, scanning the mind itself, thoughts in the mind itself. So this kind of mindfulness, looking inward meditation is what he taught them.
Right.
And it turns out that people that stay with the program, do the daily meditation, and have refresher courses every few months, they improve their lives.
Oh.
Now, if you talk to these people and you say, well, has your pain gone away? They say to you, no.
Oh.
And you say,
So their pain factor didn't change at all.
well, it did. You ask the question, did your pain go away? And they say, no. And then you say, well, I don't understand.
Okay.
Why are you better?
Right.
And they say their relationship with the pain is shifted.
Oh my goodness.
Their relationship with the pain is shifted. They no longer see pain as, in English, quote, P-A-I-N, the concept pain. They no longer see it that way.
Right.
The way they experience it is moment-to-moment sensations in their body. And by redefining their experience of these sensations moment to moment, their lives change. All of a sudden, they can be much more successful in their marriages and their relationships. They can be much more successful at work, holding down jobs. They can be much more successful in their neighborhoods and communities. So they still have the pain, but they relate to it much differently, and their whole life dramatically changes for the positive.
So you've really reframed their view.
Exactly.
And pain becomes their companion rather than their negative enemy in daily life.
It does. Also, they don't relate to pain as this concept pain, which brings a lot of fear.
Right.
And fear enhances pain.
Right.
They don't relate to that concept pain anymore.
No.
What they're relating to experientially is moment-to-moment sensations. They don't label it pain. They just, this is this sensation. And they notice differences moment to moment. They learn that through their meditation. So that fear factor, which is there when we relate to this concept pain,
Right.
is slowly eliminated, or at least reduced.
Right.
And so in that sense, you could say pain is reduced. But basically the way they describe it is a new relationship. No longer to the concept pain, but now related more to the momentary changes in the sensations in their body.
Right.
And it allows them to be much more functional and much more alive.
Over the years of working with the scientific community and studying compassion and happiness and benefits and practices and negative emotion and positive emotion, have you ever been hooked up to those sort of neuroscientific electrodes and been studied? Have they studied your brain on this?
Yes, they have. A number of years ago, I was invited several times to the University of Wisconsin in Madison in the United States to be studied as one of, I think, 11 people who have this long-term meditation experience. I think they were looking for people that had minimum of 10,000 hours of meditation, and some of the people had 40, 50,000 hours or more. And then our brains were studied through basically 2 or 3 modalities. One was the EEG, electroencephalograph. So it looks like someone took a bowl of spaghetti and turned it upside down on your head, and you have all the wires coming down. And that was one. And the other was the fMRI, the magnetic resonance machine. And that machine is, some of you have been in that machine, you know it. Others have not. Maybe you've seen it on the doctor programs on TV or something. But it's basically a huge magnet, and it looks like a massive donut.
Right.
And you're put on a metal bed, cold, metal, hard kind of, bed, or, and you're put into that big circle where the big magnet is. And you're strapped down, your head is strapped in, you can't move. You can't even scratch if you have an itch.
Right.
And the machine is very noisy. It goes bam, 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 much louder than I'm just saying. Very loud. They put, headphones and earplugs, but even with that, you still hear this loud bam, bam, bam.
Are you actually supposed to be meditating while you're in there?
And then they tell you, you're hooked up also. You've got a little mic and you've got headphones to hear the people in the next room. And they tell you, okay, meditate.
You must be a really good meditator to ignore all of
I'm not
that.
a very good meditator, but actually, probably partly because of enthusiasm, partly because of habit, of course, of meditation. I mean, familiarity. But I found it a very comfortable environment, and I was able to meditate reasonably well. The noise was not that disturbing. Fortunately, I'm not a claustrophobic person. If you're claustrophobic, it would be difficult, I think. I'm not. I could very easily relax. The people I was working with, the scientists, became and are still, friends. And so I was in a very good environment that was very safe and very supportive. And
now, what do they learn from your brain? I mean, what are they studying actually when you're in the meditative state? What are they hoping to gain insight on?
Yeah, it's still in the very infant stages, so they don't have all the answers, of course. But some of the things that they have hoped and have actually found, now these are 2 different kind of approaches. One is the scanner, the MRI scanner, functional fMRI, and the other is the EEG. So on the EEG, which is measuring the electrical activity in the outer 1 to 1.5 centimeters of the brain, the so-called cortex.
Right.
They're measuring the electrical activity there. And what they find is that seasoned, experienced meditators, when they're meditating, there are these bursts of activity on the EEG graph. And these bursts are high amplitude, so they're big, huge up and down.
Right.
And they're very high frequency, which means the time interval between each of these is very, very short.
Right.
So normally in an EEG, you have little things like this. I don't know if you can see my finger, but like this going.
Yeah.
You know, that's a normal EEG. When a meditator is meditating, a long-term meditator is meditating, they find these bursts of what they call gamma activity. So it looks like this, high spikes, and they're coming real close on each other. So it looks like this is this huge kind of thing of black
Wow.
on the tracing. Now, these are gamma waves, and they're not just one, but they're a burst for several seconds.
But what happens in the gamma wave state?
So we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there. I'm building the picture. So this doesn't happen just in one place in the brain, the cortex, but everywhere along the cortex.
Oh.
In normal people, when you do EEGs, you almost never see gamma waves. And if you do, you see an isolated one in one place, that's it. They're rare. Okay? So you see a tremendous amount of gamma activity during meditation in the long-term meditators. And what they think this means, they're not, this is ongoing research.
Right.
But what they think it means is synchronicity. It means like last night, 2 nights ago, we met at the symphony.
Yes.
And we heard, what's his name?
The Chicago
Mizell,
Symphony.
The
Yes.
Chicago Symphony. And they took out of retirement Mr. Mizell,
Yes.
who had been many, many years the conductor,
Yeah.
retired. And then they brought him out because their normal conductor, Mr. Murti,
Yeah.
was sick.
Yes.
And he stood up there with a little baton, and he had the whole orchestra following him.
Yes.
It was very well, in harmony. The horns and the violins and the violas and the percussion, they all were, in sync,
Right.
synchronized.
Right.
That's what they think this gamma wave, bursts of gamma waves do. Synchronizes the brain
Right.
so that things are in harmony, things are balanced. And if you ask the meditator his or her experience,
Yes.
what they'll often say is things are in harmony, things are balanced. There's a very broad perspective when one is in meditation. One doesn't have a lot of chatter, internal chatter. It's quiet, very
Right.
peaceful. One is very alert, at the same time very joyous.
Right.
So the experience of the meditator and what they're supposing these gamma wave activity represent seem to be complementary. Now, on the fMRI, the other studies in the magnetic resonance, they're looking primarily, they're looking primarily at the frontal lobes
Okay.
in the front of the brain. And they're finding that in long-term meditators, those areas are more active and even anatomically more developed. They're bigger. And that's where we have what are called executive function.
Right.
And executive function is, the area where we make decisions, where we can kind of, use our logic and come to conclusions, decide things. Sorry. So that's more developed in long-term meditators. Right.
So if people develop stronger and stronger meditation habits, they could hope to have more sort of gamma development, which puts people into a better synchronistic space.
I think so.
How are you going to apply
Yeah.
that to your life? That you go with the flow more, or that your athletes, sometimes in sports commentary, they talk about athletes going into the zone. And that's some high performance place where the mind and body excel in high performance for athletes. Would that be something similar?
Very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think on a practical level, what happens when someone does daily meditation after a few months or a few years, these are slow changes. They don't happen right away. But what people will experience is more joy, more peacefulness inside, less of that mental chatter. Often we have all this kind of dialogue going on and chatter going on and distraction. That will slowly calm down. And then what's left is a more peaceful space. the heart is more open. One is much more able to be generous and kind and compassionate. One, often at the end of the day, when you go to bed, you have this feeling that today has been meaningful.
Oh.
Sense of meaning. Friendships improve. If we're very rich, we have a lot of friends. If we lose our money, those friends often disappear. Yeah? It was because they wanted something from us often. Yeah? But when you are more, compassionate, and you do meditation, you're more calm and peaceful inside, you naturally attract more friends, but these are genuine friends. They're attracted, and they are friends because they feel good when they're around you. Yeah?
Right.
They feel trust, they feel respect, mutual, both ways. And so a more genuine, improved friendships develop.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens is that when life's difficulties arise, and difficulties are part of life. No one is free of difficulties. Everyone has them. When they come up, in the person that does regular meditation and the person that practices compassion, or both, the person is able to handle life's difficulties much easier.
Right.
Those difficulties are not as overwhelming. One is able to a little bit step back, of course still experience the difficulties, but not be thrown out of balance so much.
So easily.
Yeah,
I was wondering about, with your thousands of hours of meditation experience, does anything ever ruffle you anymore?
Sure it does. Of course it does. Of course it does. But not to a large degree, usually, And hopefully when I face my own death, it'll be also true at that time. And that's very important, because often when we face our death, this can be one of the most challenging times in our life.
Right.
And it's quite important that we try to handle it in a most gentle, easy way as possible. Because if we do believe in, a continuity of life, that we kind of go life to life, and this body is like changing clothes.
Yes.
Yeah. If we have some, belief in that, or even some openness to that possibility, then the process of going through the death and then rebirth becomes a very critical juncture.
Yes.
And so to make that as positive as possible helps tremendously for the future.
It smooths the passage to the next.
Exactly. It smooths the
phase.
passage, and also helps make the next experience, the next life, much happier, much more satisfying. An environment where we continue to do this kind of work.
Right.
On reducing the negative, destructive emotions and increasing the positive ones. It gives us better chance to be able to continue that in human form with proper circumstances.
Right.
So that's another important benefit of both meditation and compassion.
Right.
That it helps us work with our death, makes it an easier, more smooth experience.
Right. Well, my goodness. Thank you very much, Dr. Kerzin, for all of your in-depth information today. We feel very fortunate to have met you for the first time. I hope that you come back to Hong Kong again and that we actually continue our dialogue. But anyway, it's really been a pleasure meeting you and learning some more about your different projects and your travels and sort of the practice for compassion and the teaching and how we can all benefit from that. So I hope that more of our audience for Buddhistdoor International will learn about your work and learn about programs in their area or how they can access to it also. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Cathy. I've enjoyed this very rich dialogue. I've enjoyed very much meeting you and knowing some of your colleagues that work here at Buddhistdoor. And I have tremendous respect for what you're doing, and I look forward to ongoing dialogue and work together, collaboration in the future. If I may say so, I do have a Facebook page with my name, Barry Kerzin. And you can see some of my activities there and also get a flavor of some of this kind of secular ethics that we've been talking about, compassion, respect, honesty, trust, these
Yeah.
kind of things.
Good. Thank you. Our viewers can follow up with that too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.